Hey, everybody. Welcome to our Q1 2023 community Q&A. Today, we're going to be doing a roadmap update. We have lots of really exciting stuff to share with the community about things we're working on, planning to ship this year. We'll start with just a quick round of introductions. My name is Paul Hainsworth. I am our Chief Product Officer here at Chia. I'll pass it to Cameron.
Cameron Cooper. I'm on the product team. I'm focused on developer tools, but I also work on some other things like NFTs and our upcoming bridge project.
Eamon?
Hi, my name is Eamon Song, also on the product team. I'm focused on our farm experience and our consumer experiences.
Jan?
Hey guys, John Michael Hands. I'm our VP of storage, so I work with our storage business partners as well as do a lot of the work in the sustainability space. I manage our Circular Drive initiative, one of the nonprofits that Chia is associated with, and of course, my love for the plotting and farming community.
Shale.
Hey everyone, I'm Shale. I'm the product marketing director at Chia, focused on the brand and promoting their products.
And our anchor man, Justin England.
Hi, everybody. Justin England. I run platform and security here at Chia. Happy to see you all again. I'm riding along as the technical helper today. I have some stuff to contribute, but this is mostly the product show today.
Cool. All right. Well, that is your cast of characters for today. We're going to spend the next hour walking you through our roadmap, and then we'll move to the Q&A section for about 30 minutes or so. Feel free to add questions in the Q&A box on Zoom, and we will endeavor to answer some of them as we go along, but most of them will probably hold to the end. We're going to start off, I'll just share my screen and draw your attention to our blog post that dropped yesterday, Investing in What Sets Us Apart. Just to kind of set the stage for, why we're doing what we're doing on our roadmap, I want to draw your attention to 4 key themes. One of the key themes for this year is establishing and supporting the critical infrastructure for crypto. There are 2 really big deliverables here we're going to talk about today. One is we are building a bridge between ETH and Chia. Cameron's going to talk about that. And we also are announcing that we will be supporting a Ledger hardware wallet and hardware wallets in general in this upcoming year. So super excited to talk about that. The next major theme is around building core primitives to onboard real world assets. You're going to hear a lot this year from us about real world assets. Some of these primitives include things like a security token, CAT, verifiable credentials that supports compliant securities trading, DAO primitives, as well as some other really, really important primitives in the data layer space. Maintaining our market-driven strategy focuses on how we drive customer and market adoption in the Chia ecosystem. And 2 of those big areas, as you can imagine, on the enterprise side relate to investing further in data layer, as well as investing in tokenization with things like security tokens. And then the final major theme is around farmer onboarding and experience. You'll hear JM talk today about GPU plotting, farming improvements, plot compression. We'll talk a little bit about that too. So I encourage you to read the blog post. It's at chia.net. Lots of really good stuff to cover there. But let's jump into the roadmap next. You can check out our roadmap. It's public. It's at roadmap.chia.net. A couple of just kind of high-level comments before we jump in. We have a Q1 and Q2 roadmap, and then the rest of the year, second half 2023, is in a section that we call under consideration. So these are investments that we have a high degree of confidence in building, but we haven't got to the point where we can commit to which quarter in which they'll land. What you'll see in Q2 is we update the roadmap again and add Q3 and add Q4 in time. Our goal in the long term is to have 4 full quarters of coverage on our public committed roadmap. We will get there soon. Let's start with Q1. In today's session, we're not going to cover every single thing on the roadmap. We only have an hour, but I do want to draw your attention to some key things on the roadmap. We'll start with our clawback primitive. Eamon, do you want to take it away and talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Paul. So as we look at how we could differentiate our custody solutions on with Chia and with Chia Lisp, our sort of unique position of our coin set model allows us to enable this capability called the clawback, which is fundamentally the ability to rewind or pull a transaction back. And we like to call this a capability because there are many different use cases in which this can be applied. And so one of the first use cases that we're going to focus on is in the case where you may have actually mistyped the amount of assets that you wanted to send, or you may have actually picked the wrong asset to send, or you may have actually even sent it to the wrong wallet address. And so in those cases, we want you to have the ability to be able to, pull that transaction back so that you're not leaving the asset stranded or breaking the assets altogether. And so this is one of the first areas. And just as a reminder, when we talk about primitives, we're talking about building blocks and building blocks that will be initially focused for the developer community. In this case, the wallet developers and supporting the clawback capability and making sure that we can get broader ecosystem level support. But eventually this will also be integrated into our wallet as well. And we'll have the experience that will come up that will be built around that. And so this main area is around focusing on the, improving our sort of position on custody and adding this custody capability into our wallet so that, just gives users more control and more protection over, the assets that they're managing.
Thanks, Eamon. We're going to jump to Justin to talk a little bit about our upcoming ASIC timeline.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Paul. So this project is moving along very rapidly. Right now, we're in the final testing and confirmation stages. We have seen our VDF run on the ASIC. We've seen the ASIC do all of the basically all the checkpoint or gating tests we've needed up to this point to say we're just about ready to get them into the wild. I believe there's some final fine tuning we're still doing with our contractor, our engineering contractor that we're working with on this. But these are it's incipient. I would say that we're probably a couple weeks out from having final sign off, and then we'll work out a plan to start getting them into the hands of the community. Obviously that's something that we'll work with DevRel and everybody to kind of broadcast once we're ready for all of that. And I have been really pleased with the stuff we're seeing out of the testing right now. Like, these things are super duper performant. The build quality is super great. I think you guys are going to really love them when we get them into your hands. I'm very excited for this to come out this year.
Cool. Thank you, Justin. Before we move on to Q2, I just want to give a shout out to offer notifications. This dropped in our 1.7.0 release. Please download the Chia reference wallet, give it a try. We think this is a huge boost for NFT trading, where now you can grab someone's NFT ID from Dexy or another decentralized exchange and send an offer directly to that owner. We think this will substantially increase transactions on chain because there's a cost to sending an offer notification, but we also think this is going to increase trading volumes of things like NFTs. Stay tuned for more evolution on things like offer notifications for other assets too.
Just wanted to, for a point of order, Paul, we have chat off right now just because it was being abused. If you want to, contact the panel, please use the Q&A for right now. We may turn chat back on, but it's intentionally off right now. So there's, no need to, keep letting us know that. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Justin. All right, we are going to jump to our Q2 roadmap, where Eamon is going to talk about verifiable credentials and our security token cap.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Again, we're talking about primitives, and the focus here is when Paul drew your attention we have a big focus around how do you tokenize real world assets. And so when we look at that, we identified 2 areas or 2 primitives that are going to help enable that. First is the verifiable credentials. This is actually going to be a building block to the security token cats. And so you'll see these 2 pretty closely tied together. There are many other use cases that you can use to satisfy with verifiable credentials. But at the end of the day, what that is a, someone being able to make a claim about something. In this case, it could be a country of residence, and a third-party credential issuer who would verify that information, allowing it to be written on chain as a VC or verifiable credential. And that's going to be a building block towards the security token cats, which would be like any other Chia asset tokens that we have today, but they'll have some added restrictions where you may need a verifiable credential in order for trade of those tokens to happen. And so what this is really going to bring to us is the ability to have compliant security tokens, depending on the jurisdiction, but allow trading of those and leveraging offers and other capabilities to enable more liquidity and more easier access to capital. And so this becomes an opportunity where, as a startup, if you wanted to fundraise, you can issue these cats, security token cats, and still be in compliance with all the regulatory rules that are required. And so this is a big opportunity that we see, and are some of the building blocks that we'll be building towards for this year.
Cool, thank you, Eamon. I'm going to talk for just a moment about the next primitive, which is a set of primitives to support DAOs. I mentioned that when we think about DAOs, as you might expect, we think about how you can enable real-world use cases, real-world assets on chain, how Chia can bring compliance with local securities and financial regulations into the growing ecosystem around DAOs. So we've really been thoughtful about how we go to market with compliant DAOs that are really, game-changing in the blockchain space. Some of the capabilities that you'll see in Q2 when we launch the primitives include the ability to form a treasury, an ability to issue DAO tokens that represent ownership of the DAO, and being able to use those tokens for governance voting, including voting that enables you to spend the treasury. So this really unlocks a new type of entity or company in the world. We really think that DAOs have a game-changing capability to bring together semi-trusted parties to get stuff done. I think the missing link in the crypto space in general has been, how can you do this in a compliant way? And so what you'll start to see is these primitives interacting with things like the security token cat with verifiable credentials, so that any group of people can come together to work on something and profit and grow and have a business and still be compliant with securities laws. So stay tuned for more on that. I expect us to host several different community conversations, likely in places like Twitter Spaces, where we talk more about DAOs and how we want to foster ecosystem growth, as well as around security token cats for helping to grow an ecosystem there too. Let's move on to the next topic. Cameron, can you tell us a little bit about what you're up to with our friends in engineering around building a bridge?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so like we've announced here, we are working on building a bridge from Ethereum to Chia. The goal here would be to facilitate the movement of assets from Ethereum to Chia and vice versa, primarily looking at initially supporting bridging Ether over to Chia, and additionally ERC20 tokens such as USDC over to Chia. And they will come out on the Chia side as wrapped assets using the CAT standard. And then you'll be able to go back to Ethereum with those wrapped assets. We're not making, at this point in time, the ability to take native Chia assets back to Ethereum, but that is something that is possible. So potentially you could see CATs as wrapped assets on Ethereum in the future, but that's not something that we'll have here. Something that will also be possible in the future that is not part of our initial release would be NFT support. So we could, with the same mechanisms, be able to take Ethereum NFTs and bring them over to Chia as newly minted Chia NFTs. This will be a permissioned bridge that will run and be controlled by a set of validators. And so it'll be an M of N sort of signature required to do any of the bridge activities. So as a part of this bridge rollout, the contribution from Chia network will be the development of the bridge software. But what we want to do is we want to recruit a set of validators who want to participate in running the bridge. The Chia network will not actually be a participant running a validator. So if anybody out there is interested in joining as a validator, please reach out to us. We think that there's a lot of good groups in the ecosystem that would make sense to run this. And so, yeah, we're going to begin soon starting to build that set of who the validators will be. Yeah, that's the bridge.
Great. Thank you, Cameron. How can folks get in touch with you if they're interested in becoming a validator?
Yeah, probably the best way is via email. If you want to email me, cameron@chia.net, then we'll set up a time to talk about it.
Great. Thanks, Cameron. I will say that what you're seeing here with this roadmap is that in the Q2 timeframe, there will be the ability to issue entirely new types of assets on Chia. And then you're also going to see the release of a bridge, which allows capital inflows into Chia very, very easily. Initially with wrapped ETH and things like wrapped USDC, but the combination of capital inflow capability, really frictionless inflow, and entirely new asset classes on Chia, I think is a really winning combination for driving more ecosystem adoption, creating more things that people can build businesses on top of. And from our point of view, fill blocks eventually lead to fees and more demand for the blockchain. All right, let's move on to the next topic, which is a new soft fork called Acerpa 4. Mm-hmm. Cameron, can you talk a little bit about why we thought to do this and how it relates to things like offers?
Yeah, absolutely. So Acerpa 4 is a reference to a new condition code that we're adding that allows a coin spend puzzle to return this new condition that indicates that the spend is only valid if it happens after a given block height. And the reason this is important is that, if it happens before a given block height. And the reason that's important is it'll allow us to do things like create offers that expire, which we think will be a really valuable sort of enhancement to the current offers capabilities as we have sort of increased trading happening on chain and maybe market makers entering the equation. We think that this will be a really important capability that'll allow additional liquidity to sort of get involved in the sort of trading ecosystem. So this is by adding a new op code, something that has to be done through a soft fork. It's not a hard fork, but it does require a bit of a consensus change to add that condition. And so it'll be something that we add under a soft fork and have a timed release where there's a specific block height where that becomes available.
Awesome. Thank you, Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to talk a little bit about some of the changes coming to farming. JM, do you want to walk us through some of the new stuff that is coming out this quarter and in the second half?
Yeah, so we have released the alpha of Blaebit CUDA, which is our GPU plotter that supports NVIDIA cards, into the beta program. We have almost 400 people that are testing software in the beta program. We have log submissions from about like 70 folks already. So it's been going extremely well, with the Windows and Linux testing that we have so far. So that was the Blaebit CUDA alpha. And in the next phase, we're gonna have like a phase 2 of the beta program where we move into compressed plot support. So these plotters already create compressed plots, and then in this phase 2 of the beta program, which will happen here in a few weeks, get started. The beta program will start testing this at scale on Windows and Linux and Mac for actually farming these compressed plots. So once we have that goes to the beta program and the software is mature and reliable and tested and validated across a bunch of operating systems and system types and ARM and x86, as you can imagine, we have a bunch of stuff to support. Then we'll have support in the beta client, like where people can do this right from the GUI. I know there's a lot of questions on this being in Q2 of 2023, and people are very eager and anxious to get farming these compressed plots. We know there are third-party solutions that are closed source that are out there that can do this, and this is obviously why we're investing time to go develop this stuff. We want Chia's tools for plotting and farming to be best in class. And it's right now with the GPU plotting, we have the fastest plotter in the world today on both CPU and GPU. And I think people should come to know that we're going to support competitive stuff with the Chia client for farming. So we don't want anybody to ever feel like they're being left out because they can't do something on the Chia client. So the plot compression, then there's a ton of questions about like what are we going to do next on the plotter. So the stuff that we have on the roadmap that we haven't really figured out the priority on, we're obviously going to support higher K values. A lot of people have asked for that. Although the value of that is not as much as it used to be with decompression. You don't get a lot of the power savings you did in the previous farming regime with using higher K values. A lot of people we've heard want support for lower DRAM or lower system DRAM for GPU plotting. So we're looking at investigating doing this on desktops and with temporary SSD, similar to how Blade Disk works today. We're obviously going to be putting this plotting and farming compression support into the GUI, where it's at just CLI today for the tools. We know it needs to be in the GUI for people to be able to use this across a broader range of systems. We have the roadmap to support higher compression levels. And as you saw in the roadmap for the next quarter, we do have harvesting and farming with GPU on the roadmap, and that may be something we can be able to get to sooner. But really, it's just that we have a ton of stuff on the plotting and farming roadmap, and we're going to try to sequence those in the order that makes sense, that'll best benefit the farming community. The other thing that's exciting, I know a lot of, even though NVIDIA is, the majority of the market for graphics cards, we are working with AMD now and going to figure out how we get AMD support for our GPU plotter as well. So there's a ton of really awesome stuff on the farming plotting roadmap, and we're just going to, we know that people are eagerly waiting to deploy it in production.
Thanks, Jam. I expect that we'll be doing further community conversations with you about farming and plotting. So this isn't the end.
Exactly. And there's a few questions about there's all these questions about how much can I farm with the CPU and all this stuff. We're going to have a whole farming simulator tool that will be able to tell you all this without having to go create, hundreds of terabytes of plots. You can be able to just, create one, and then this farming simulator will tell you how much you can farm at a certain compression level. And so we'll have tools, and again, the farming plotting channel in the Keybase is, where to ask questions, if you have any questions for support. So.
Great, thank you. Let's move to the last topic in the Q2 roadmap. Eamon, can you talk to us about data layer permissioning? And if we have a minute, maybe you could talk about the pan inclusion capability as well.
Yeah, sure. So today with data layer, all the information stored there is generally can be read by anyone who is able to subscribe to that data layer singleton. So what permissions now adds is the ability, and this is more because when we look at enterprise use cases, enterprises don't necessarily want all of their data to be read by everyone else. And so the permission capability is going to allow the enterprises to define and set, who is able to both read and as well as write to data layer. And so this now it takes data layer from where it currently is and gives us more of an entry point into enterprise use cases with data layer where not the data doesn't necessarily need to be public for everyone to see or read. And so that's the data layer permissions piece. The other data layer part is with the original data layer primitive, we shipped a feature called proof of inclusion. which is just a way to prove that a piece of data has been written into the data layer. And what we have with a feature coming in the future is called pay on inclusion, which is now the combination of using that proof of inclusion. So taking this potentially off-chain data, storing it in data layer, and taking that proof that that data exists and being able to exchange that in an offer file in return for maybe another asset, right? So you could potentially say, I'll trade you XCH for making sure that this data is changed in the database. And now that can be done atomically so that the data update and data layer can be proven to a point where now you can also satisfy this offer file and then create a transaction based on that. And so that's something that's coming in the future, but we'll be leveraging, both of those capabilities of proof of inclusion as well as offer files to go enable.
Great, thank you, Eamon. I want to move to the second half of the year. This is the stuff that's under consideration. We have a pretty high degree of confidence about some of these things that we're working on, but we'll have a schedule for you shortly for when they're going to drop. Cameron, I'm wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about Ledger and hardware wallets.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something we've been looking forward to for a long time. It's something that we've been blocked on because the Ledger devices don't actually support BLS signatures. And in order for us to make any progress, we've just been waiting for that to happen. Ledger has been hard at work on it. In fact, they've actually now shipped a firmware that does have BLS support in it. Unfortunately, that's not everything we need. We actually need a little bit more from them in order to be able to begin development of a Ledger app that runs on device and can generate BLS signatures for Chia. But once that is done, and they're signaling that it should be in the very near term, they've said in a matter of weeks. So once they've done that, we can begin development of our Ledger app that will add Chia support to it. So there will be a couple of deliverables there. The first one is the one that runs on device. So when you've got a Ledger, you can install the Chia app onto it, and that'll handle all the signature generation. But then you'll also need wallet support. So whatever wallet you're using, if it's the official Chia desktop wallet, then it'll have to have Ledger support as well to communicate with that app that runs on device. And so we're preparing to start development on those things. We're, like I said, blocked, but we know what work is required and we're planning ahead for it. And we're hoping that as soon as we're unblocked, we can get these things developed and shipped as soon as possible, because like all of you, we've been excited to have Ledger support, ever since Chia launched. And so finally it's happening and we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, super excited to see that come to market. And I also just want to mention, the support from the community on Twitter and elsewhere in Ledger's Discord is very welcome. Rallying the community to create awareness and attention with partners like Ledger and some crypto exchanges, for example, is really, really valuable. And so I appreciate people's efforts in trying to raise attention with some of these partners. Cameron, can you talk to us a little bit about Wallet SDK? There's 3 different items on the roadmap. We're making, you can see by that we're making a big investment this year in improving wallet capabilities. Maybe talk to us about what the vision is there and what the phases look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the 3 cards that you see here are really just sort of milestones towards delivering the vision of the Wallet SDK. The vision of the Wallet SDK is a software development kit that would enable a developer to build wallets. And so if you're a wallet developer and you want to build a wallet that supports Chia, then this is what you would want to use. And there are a number of sort of very core capabilities and functionality that every wallet needs. It starts with basic things like key management and key derivation, and getting into signature generation, then dealing with CLVM and puzzles, and then connecting to the network, finding coins that are unspent, creating coin spends. There's a bunch of sort of work that has to be done for every single wallet, and every time you have a new puzzle, you often end up wanting to build new wallet capabilities for that. And so we're trying to take all of that and encapsulate that within a wallet SDK that'll allow you to focus just on building, the specific capabilities that you need that are unique to your wallet or your puzzle. And so we're hoping that, this will help anybody who wants to build an application that leverages Chia, which is essentially what a wallet is, then this can get them running faster. Now, we're building it in Rust. And the reason we're building it in Rust is that we want to be able to create bindings and targets for multiple languages. And so this would allow us to compile to WebAssembly and be able to support in-browser tools, but then also be able to do native linking, whether it's for an iOS wallet or an Android wallet or something server-side. All of those can be covered by a Rust library. So that's what we're building it in.
Great. Thank you, Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
Let's shift to talk about BLS OP Codes. This was an item that we had on our roadmap to land earlier. Mm-hmm. It's moved out a little bit later into the year, into the second half. Maybe talk a little bit about some of the thinking around that and what the purpose of the OP Codes are.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to add new OP codes to CLVM. This is something that actually requires a soft fork in order to be able to do, which is why this is turned into a bit of a longer term project, but we think it's important and worth doing. And the reason is that there's a bunch of capabilities that we can get by adding additional BLS operations into CLVM. We actually have some already. We have the ability to create BLS G1 points, and we have the ability to do some point addition on G1 points. But what we really want to be able to do is be able to do operations on G2 points and be able to do pairings. With these additional basic BLS operations, then we can start to do some more interesting things within Chia Lisp code to do things that would support things like verifying zero knowledge proofs, or to be able to implement Ferkel trees in Chia Lisp. And so the very first step in order to having something like a ZK rollup as a layer 2 is to get these BLS operations in place. And so that's what this is working on. We actually have made good progress on this, but because it is a soft fork adding new operations, pretty extensive testing and validation phase. And then we also have to plan ahead for when that soft fork actually goes live, which is why this is a little further out.
Cool, thank you. I think we had one last topic to discuss today, which was Singleton spend aggregation. Mm-hmm. Maybe just give a bit of background about what this is and what problems it solves in the space.
Yeah, great question. Okay, so within the coin set model, everything is a coin, and a coin is unspent until it is spent, and then it can only be spent once. And we have certain types of coins on the blockchain, which we refer to as singletons. And a singleton is basically a coin that when it's spent, it recreates itself, and it's kind of guaranteed to be unique. And we leverage this in a lot of places. We have those plot NFTs. We also have NFTs and DIDs. A lot of things are built on top of singletons because you want to know that you only have one of them on the chain. There are some interesting applications that can be built with singletons that would require many people to be able to spend that singleton potentially within the same block, which is not a capability that we have with singletons today. AMMs come to mind. And so we're working on a technique that we call singleton spend aggregation, which would allow a farmer, as they're constructing a block, to take many spends of a singleton and aggregate them together into a single spend. This will allow many users to be able to spend that singleton within the same block and unlock a bunch of cool applications. So this is pretty complex to build. I think conceptually it's kind of easy to get your head around, but there's some pretty thorough engineering that has to go into it because it gets into how the blocks are constructed and how we manage the mempool. And so we've begun working on it, but it is a longer term investment in research engineering that's going on there. And so it's on the roadmap for later this year, but we're excited about what it'll bring to the table for us though.
Great, thanks, Cameron. That covers all of the main topics we wanted to discuss in the roadmap update today. As I mentioned, there are many other things on the roadmap. There are other cards here that we're not going to be discussing in today's session, not because they aren't important, but because primarily we wanted to use the rest of our time to do a Q&A with the community, answer your questions. And so with that, I would like to switch to some of the questions. While we're on the topic of Singleton spend aggregation, Cameron, can we talk a little bit about this question? Should we not expect any AMMs until H2 given Singleton spend aggregation has been pushed out?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Singleton spend aggregation is not a requirement for AMMs. Aggregation can either be done on-chain or off-chain. AMMs, Singleton spend aggregation will allow it to happen in the mempool, sort of essentially on-chain. But an AMM can be built with all the aggregation done off-chain, which is, I think, what the guys at Hashgreen are working on doing. And so we should still expect to see AMMs come even before this is delivered. So I don't see it pushing out AMMs coming to Chia.
Yeah, great. While I still got you, Cameron, let's talk about the bridge. There's a question here for you. Who will be the multi-sig holders of the ETH to XEH bridge?
Yeah, good question. So obviously this is a critical element of our security story. And we have not identified who the validators or those multi-sig participants will be. We want to build a set of validators of known entities from the community who are trusted, who can run this together. And so we've kind of have an open call for anybody who's interested and wants to raise their hand. We'll also be reaching out to anybody who we think would make a good candidate to run the run validators. But yeah, we don't know who they are yet.
Yeah, and just to share some thoughts that we have about what would make an ideal validator. These are folks who have experience running real-time systems. And so, there are some folks in the Chia ecosystem who come to mind. Pool operators seem like maybe an ideal candidate. I think because the initial users are likely to be people in the Chia ecosystem, if the validators are known entities to the ecosystem, I think that's also a benefit. They don't have to be, but certainly would be a benefit. So please reach out to Cameron if you're interested in being a validator. I would stress, again, this is not a bridge that Chia Network Inc. is going to be running. We are writing most of the code for it. We will be open sourcing it and helping the initial validators get set up, providing technical support. But this is something that we expect people in the ecosystem to run. One other thing that we do want to talk to validators about is turning the bridge into a DAO. We just happen to be launching a set of DAO primitives around the same time. And so you could imagine those 9 validators forming a DAO in which the cash flows from the bridge ultimately go into a DAO treasury. And then the DAO could issue compliant security tokens for that bridge to raise capital, and then could use governance voting to decide, hey, do we want the next chain to be Solana or Polygon or some other place? And then could use that capital from the treasury to invest in building out the next blockchain that the bridge integrates to. So our larger vision for the bridge is not just capital inflow, but providing an ecosystem opportunity for people to get involved and participate with. So I think that was one of the bridge questions, and I saw on the list here there was another one. Bridges are a common source of hacks in crypto. What gives you confidence that the ETH to XCH bridge will be safe? Is the code going to be fully audited before deployment? Answer to that last question is yes. We are lining up a third-party security audit firm. We expect it to be audited. So that is a very top-of-mind concern for us. You can imagine as we started to think about a bridge for Chia, hacks were also a very top-of-mind concern. I would say that this is not like a wormhole or other types of bridges that are designed to be trustless and permissionless. This is very much a permissioned bridge. there are 9 validators who have keys to co-sign spends. So this is not a permissionless project. Code, of course, would be open source, but it is a permission bridge. So it is a very different design, and that's by intention. We spent a lot of time with Bram investigating different technical options and concluded that at this point in the evolution of bridges, the totally trustless, permissionless model that you see in the market is just not mature enough for us to put a lot of confidence in. So that's how we landed on this design. Totally open to feedback on that, but that's how we landed here, which is, you know, a big reason why we have confidence that the bridge will be safe. Let's move to some other questions. Cameron, there's a question for you. When will ZK rollup and L2 on the roadmap?
It's a good question. We have not put ZK rollups on the roadmap. I don't know if and when we will put ZK rollups on the roadmap. What I'm hoping happens is that we release the BLS OP codes, and then an outside group outside of Chia Network wants to build and deliver a ZK rollup. That would be ideal.
Got it. Okay. And just for folks on the panel, if you want to close out questions as we answer them, that'll help to sort through. JM, a question for you. Will farming sooner provide a permanently way to do light wallet farming without ever having to full sync?
Yeah, so we have this thing called Farm Sooner on the roadmap, and this is actually one of the things that we have funded through the Chia Cultivation Grant Program. So you guys may know Evergreen, that makes this evergreen farmer miner thing. They have for pre-plotted drives and farms. So they're going to be writing us some software that will allow you to run a very low power instance on like a NAS or some kind of other box that may not support a full node, and it'll connect to a remote node for farming. So this is something we'll have in open source in the toolkit for Chia Farming that some folks will use. Obviously, we encourage people to run a node because it promotes decentralization, but we realize that the time to sync and the requirements are more than it is for just regular farming. So there are some people that are just going to want to run their own remote full node and then, you know, have this software running somewhere else that points back to it. So that is something that we are in active development on. So
great, thank you, JM. Eamon, a couple of questions for you about clawback. Let's start with the first one. Can you elaborate on the specific use case that will be used in the wild for clawing back funds? I saw Validity Period UI doing something Evergreen experimenting with. What else can be done? Maybe talk a little bit about some of the use cases we have in mind.
Yeah, sure. So what I originally talked about is when you're sending a transaction out, designating or that being designated as a sort of clawbackable transaction. The sort of the next level use case is really also about adding more custody controls for, you know, having all of your assets as they are added to your wallet be protected with clawbacks. So this is more in a more nefarious use case where maybe someone has stolen or sniffed your keys, and in doing so, they can, you know, just import your wallet anywhere and be able to send those assets out of it. And so in this case, the use of clawback would be protecting those assets as they are in your wallet, not necessarily at the time that you send it, but so that if there's anyone malicious who does get access to your wallet, that with anything that is sent out, it's going to have this clawback protection enabled for it. And, you know, to add on to the sort of other use cases, then the user who's going to, you know, the owner of the assets would also have the ability to claw that back into a recovery wallet. Because if you're clawed back into the same wallet, you're just kind of at a standstill with the malicious user. You know, being able to claw back into a separate recovery wallet allows you to actually get back control of the assets that were being sent out initially. So a lot of this, you know, the time periods, all those, you know, we're still kind of going through the user experience and design research around it. But we do expect, you know, users to be able to set certain periods, you know, whether it be an hour or a day or, you know, a week, right? As you are able to define those time periods, and you're able to set up a wallet that has that level of protection, you're also in effect designating, a hot wallet versus a warm wallet versus a cold wallet. And so, the amount of protection you want to have and the types of assets that you're protecting and the value of those assets may have different, time limits that you want to set, based on your specific use case. And so, that's kind of a little bit more about how clawbacks work and how we envision that being integrated in.
Great, thanks, Eamon. I think you may have answered the second question from the community. For initial release with the clawback period intervals can be set by user or specific, or will the context specific presets?
Yeah, like I said, we're figuring out sort of what is the most usable way for that. But we do envision potentially both coming in where, specific types of transactions will have a preset, but you would have the flexibility of being able to set a specific time period for a specific transaction.
Got it. Okay. I want to go back to the bridge for just one hot minute, and then we're going to move on to some lighter topics. Because there's a question, why don't you want to be one of the validators? That is a great question. So there are two answers to that. One is we as Chia Network Inc. Are very focused on how do we grow an ecosystem? How do we build capabilities that people can run their own businesses on top of? And we see the bridge as its own business. So that's like one part of the answer. Another part of the answer, though, is just simple logistics. At this point in time, as you all have heard, we're on an accelerated timeline to IPO. And as part of that, we want to keep our business as focused as possible and not in adjacent businesses. And so that's like a big part of our thinking as well. But the primary thing is really we want the community to build and run stuff as opposed to Chia Network Inc. building and running stuff. There's a question here, Eamon, maybe you can answer. Why no mobile wallet on the roadmap?
Yeah, right now we are focused on sort of looking at all the primitives that we're building and being able to build sort of these reference experiences in our reference wallet, our desktop reference wallet. I think what Cameron spoke to around the Wallet SDK is meant to enable the broader ecosystem to build these wallets while we focus on bringing these primitives and their base experiences out, out to market. And so, initially right now, our focus is about that and allowing, real world assets and enabling that. So our, right now our focus and our priorities are bringing those to market versus bringing a mobile wallet to market. And we also have many, community members that are developing, great mobile wallets today. And, they're doing a great job sort of filling in that gap.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that as well, Eamon, that the folks at Pocket and some other teams are building really fantastic wallet experiences. Our mission is not to compete with players in the ecosystem, but to rather enable them to build successful, sustainable businesses. So my view as a product leader here is, how do we take our very limited resources and be a force multiplier for Chia blockchain? So if we can have a small team of engineers build wallet capabilities, say like 5 people, that enables 5 wallet players and 50 or 100 engineers to build a business, that's a force multiplier. 5 engineers enabling 5 companies and 50 engineers. That's the approach that we're generally trying to take here at Chia. Okay, let's move on to some lighter stuff for one hot minute. There was a question in here for you, Cameron, about Chia Friends. What, if anything, does Chia Official have planned for Chia Friends?
I wish I had more to say on that. Chia official has no plans to do anything with Chia Friends. I think you all know there's a Chia Friends Discord now. Seth and I are both in there and active, and we hope to see Chia Friends community continue to thrive. But in terms of Chia Network, doing another Chia Friends collection or launch or anything like that, there's no plans for that, and I don't see that happening. But that doesn't mean the end of Chia Friends. It just means not going to be coming from Chia Network.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Chia Friends is now a community project, and there's a core group of people running that Discord who have ideas and dreams and visions. If there are ways that Chia Network Inc. can help that community, we're all for helping. But the leadership of Chia Friends is coming from the community at this point. Another light question, maybe you can talk for a second about this, Cameron. Recently, a beanie NFT surfaced. I may have seen that beanie somewhere just a second ago.
All right, guys, I'll use it right here.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
This is an innovative way to sell merch. Has this changed the equation on when merch?
Do you want me to answer the question on when merch, Paul? Because I can.
Well, so I think as a two-parter here, maybe Cameron, you can share some of the kind of R&D stuff you and I have been talking about with Freddie, and then we can talk a little bit about timeline for merch.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I think NFTs and NFT marketplaces are a really interesting way to think about selling physical goods. As you saw with the beanie, Paul is selling his Marvelous Marmots mug on there. It doesn't have to be purely digital art that's being bought and sold and traded using NFTs. So I do think that there's actually a really interesting opportunity to do more of that. And we are doing a little bit of prototyping and experimenting around that, potentially related to merch. I don't want to say that this is like an official, well, I don't even know how I should approach this, Paul, because we are building something that would facilitate this being a merch store on an NFT marketplace, but I don't think we're ready to say that that's going to be the Chia merch shop. So
that's right. Yeah. So we're actively exploring how, to the person's question, how NFTs could be like a really innovative way of selling merch. There's Chia merch, as in like the hoodies that you're seeing people on this call wearing, but just merchandise in general is something we're really interested in exploring, being a new real world asset on Chia blockchain. So stay tuned for an update on that, and when the actual Chia branded merch drops as well. All right, let's go back to some serious business. There's a question for you, JM. What will the hard fork result in? I assume there will be legacy blockchain that can be left behind. What other ramifications do you think the fork could have in the project and community?
I think the fork they're referring to, if you look at chip 12 and chip 13, and if you read the blog post on GPU, I guess we do have it in the roadmap under Q3 for if seems like the community is very supportive of the chip to do this fork to basically reduce the profitability of block grinding for the multiple generations of future hardware. In which case, we've definitely thought through these scenarios of like what will happen. That came up on the chip public call about, okay, what will happen to people that don't upgrade and they try to start submitting blocks and they get stuck on this old chain. So there's a lot of education that needs to go on, especially because a lot of people in the Chia ecosystem, this may be their first blockchain or first full node that they're running, and about updating software. I think we have good telemetry on the amount of folks that are updating software. We've done soft forks in the past, and so we know how to do this. We're making sure we have enough ample time to get everybody upgrade. But the truth is, if there's a hard fork and you're farming on the old chain, you're not going to win any rewards. You're going to be submitting blocks and they're going to be going into nowhere, right? They're going so it is important to educate the community on this. And I don't see a scenario where there's like a group of people that are like, yeah, block grinding is awesome, let's turn Chia into proof of work. If somebody wanted to fork Chia and do something stupid like that, they could already do that. So
Great. Thanks, Jam. While you've got the floor, can you answer the question, how can I get one of the Time Lord ASICs?
Yeah, let me see if I can share a little picture here. You guys see this?
So cool.
Yeah, this is it. It's like Raspberry Pi sized, and we kind of had that form factor inspired. The ASIC does have 3 VDF engines on it, and so there'd be folks that want to run it super fast on a single board. There'd be some folks that want to run all 3 for running a single Time Lord. So yeah, we're as Justin mentioned, we the first step is to get it functional and then get it running on testnet and making sure that all the code is happy before we drop a Time Lord that is 3 to 4 times faster on mainnet. That's something where obviously we're also carefully looking at making sure that it doesn't disrupt mainnet. In this first batch will be kind of small run, and we don't have a process yet for how we're going to determine the criteria for deploying the Time Lords. But educational research, those are probably high priority people that are trustworthy and they can run these stable in other geos. We want them geographically distributed, so that's very important. So these are the criteria we'll have. We haven't come up with it quite yet, but eventually there will be higher volume where just people who have enough money can go buy one. But we're not there yet.
Great, thanks, Jam. I just want to give a call out to additional questions if people want to ask. Throw them into the Q&A box. We have some time left over here to chat, so feel free. There's a question that I'll take. Does under consideration mean you are not working on those things at the moment? So let me take a moment to explain what that means. Most of the things, almost everything in the under consideration is being worked on to some degree by folks in the company. Our product development process includes kind of 4 stages, starting with stage 0 with a concept, where we think about what are some of the problems we want to solve, write down some high-level requirements, and we start to engage with engineering. In stage 1, we start moving into planning, which starts to include things like architecture, engaging in prototyping. Some of the things that are under consideration are in one of those 2 stages. There are very few things that are not being actively engaged, at least in those 2 initial stages. Stage 2, the planning part exits toward actually building, to typically testnet deployment, and then the final stage is mainnet. So most of the things there are in the concept stage. Some of them are in the planning stage with prototyping being done. That's where many of those things are. Okay. There's another question here. Are the applet items on the roadmap separate apps, or is it teasing plugin functionality to their reference wallet? So our thinking about the 3 applets, I'll give it a little bit of color too. But first, the applets that are being referred to are an enterprise custody tool, enterprise permissioning, and enterprise cap minting. The idea is that in combination, all 3 of these applets result in a market instrument capability, so that anybody, enterprise customer or startup, can issue assets with the enterprise minting tool, can add permissioning capabilities so that, for example, when an employee leaves the company, the ability to mint disappears. When new people join, you can add through the permissioning tool more employees who can mint. And then the custody tool is the ability to use similar capabilities to our internal custody tool for managing our pre-farm. All of these require a user experience on top of the core primitives that are simple for very non-technical people in an organization to use. We call them applets partly because they are meant to be somewhat minimum viable product that can be customized and integrated into existing enterprise systems. And so there would be capabilities to plug these things into the tools that a Fortune 500 company already uses. And this plays into the larger enterprise strategy at Chia Network Inc., which is let's build stuff and then work on a kind of Red Hat style model to do system integration, to plug some of these capabilities into companies, earn revenue doing that as a going concern. I hope that answers that question. Let's take a look at some of the other questions in here. Just want to clear some of them out. Okay, there's a question from Haya, who is one of the founders of Pocket. Woke up exactly in the middle of the night, my time zone. I think it is like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning for you in China right now, Pocket. I would like to ask a question. What is the current consideration for layer 2? Because our team is very interested in it. Cameron, you've been doing a lot of thinking about layer 2. Do you want to start? And then I've got some thoughts too.
Yeah, I mean, there's the first initial kind of vague answer, which is there are lots of different types of layer 2. Some of them you could build right now. The layer 2s that I'm particularly interested in would be ZK rollups. And we're doing everything we can to facilitate that becoming a possibility, which is really starting with the BLS operations that we're going to soft fork into CLVM. So I guess I'd be more interested in hearing back from you and your team, which is what kind of layer 2 are you interested in building? And is there something that you need help with from us to make that happen?
Yeah, please reach out. If you have ideas or thoughts, you can contact Cameron directly. You can always reach out to me as well. I'm accessible on Keybase as well as Twitter. My DMs are open. I am at Mouthy on Twitter. There are just a couple more questions here. Eamon, do you want to answer this question? There's a PR around, quote, stop sending change to new wallet, end quote. Is this going to allow Gobi style wallet address management in the referenced wallet?
Yeah, so the reason for the PR is currently today, and this is going to get a little bit in the weeds, whenever you send change, our wallet automatically sends change to a new address, which then has a result in increasing your derivation index. And I know that's sort of something new that people have been using. And the intention of this is that, having flexibility to define whether or not you want to do that or not is going to, potentially come at a cost of some privacy, because this initially our implementation was very, very privacy focused to make sure that all change is sent to a new address. But by turning this off, you do lose some of that aspect of privacy, but what you gain is some performance around the wallet sync. And so you'll be seeing other changes and improvements that we'll be making to wallet sync. And this is one of those things that are going to help feed that.
Great, thank you, Eamon. I see we have come to the end of our Q&A list. There are no further open questions. I want to thank everybody for asking questions and joining today and participating. A couple of closing comments. This video is recorded and will be posted online for your future enjoyment. Expect we're also going to cut up pieces of it and make it more digestible for individual things. But I also want to mention that as a product team, we're going to resume the Twitter spaces that we're doing. This will be an opportunity for people to just drop in, have a conversation with us, ask questions. This will be more of an open kind of forum. So stay tuned for dates from our official Chia Project Twitter account for when the next product Twitter spaces will be. I want to thank our panelists for joining today. It's been great to connect. Expect to see the Q3 roadmap drop in early Q2. We'll have an update for you then. I think that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. And I mentioned on the call, for anybody doing plotting, farming questions, come on over to Keybase. We're helping everybody out. Huge community of beta farmers testing all this new software out. So I know it's going to be confusing for a lot of people. So we're here answering questions.
Cool. Any other parting comments from the panelists? Okay. We'll see you again soon, folks. Thanks so much.